The woman has 365 beast husbands. Therefore, she has to change the bedsheets every day when she wakes up. Even when she was on her period, she didn't stop. Little did she know, each of her beast husbands wanted to kill her. All because the woman, relying on her identity as an interstellar princess, found joy in tormenting the beastmen every day. Not only did she skin the white tiger general to make a furry coat, her snake beast husband even had his tail chopped off and his pair of cons severed. Even the marriage alliance prince was stripped of his feathers and had his wings broken. Under her torment, the beast husbands finally all turned dark together. Disregarding the contract's backlash, they cruelly harmed her. And Aloys, who died in a lab explosion, just happened to transmigrate into this vicious princess's body. Fortunately, the system thoughtfully gave her a lab identical to the one from her previous life, and an infinite space-planting dimension. However, thinking of the original story's ending, she still felt a bit panicked. But at this moment, the rabbit-eared youth, kneeling on the ground, was even more terrified than her. General Jolene is severely injured, his mental sea eroded by insect poison. He has now fallen into a frenzied state and urgently needs a female's mental power to soothe him. I beg your highness to go save him. Aloys listened to the youth's report, her voice cold on the surface, but inside, she was already on the verge of screaming wildly. Jolene is one of her beast husbands. After being severely injured by the original host, he was locked in the dungeon. In the end, due to lack of timely treatment, he became a cripple. According to the storyline, this is exactly the beginning of Jolene's complete dark transformation. It concerns her own little life. Aloys didn't have time to think too much and hurried to the dungeon. Just stepping in, she was immediately entangled by a black snake around her calf. Looking down at the blood-stained snake tail coiled around her leg, goosebumps rose all over in an instant. It took her a good while to calm down and suppress the fear growing in her heart. This was the original host's least favored snake beast husband, Sherwin. Sherwin, let go. She maintained the original host's tone and coldly commanded. But Sherwin remained unmoved. Now, he thought Aloys was going to torture Jolene again. He's already like this, and you still don't intend to let him go? Aloys knew that Jolene at this moment had completely lost control and could not be delayed any longer. If you don't let go now, don't blame me for being impolite. A cold and mocking voice came from below. When has Her Highness ever been polite to us? Which part are you planning to cut off this time? Only then did Aloys notice that the snake tail coiled around her legs was severed at one section, with traces of black blood still seeping out. Aloys then remembered that the original host often whipped him, even plucked his snake scales to make a crystal lamp, and in a fit of anger, cut off his snake tail. Thinking of this, Aloys felt her vision darken, as if she could already see a miserable future life waving at her. Aloys knew persuasion was useless. She swept a cold glance over the beastmen guards standing aside with bowed heads, not daring to look this way, and ordered them to drag Sherwin away. Sherwin's old wounds had never been treated, leaving him weak to begin with. After struggling a couple of times, he was subdued. In the room, Jolene appeared, maddened, her eyes bloodshot. Seeing Aloys enter, directly transforming into a white tiger, it let out an earth-shattering roar. Aloys was startled by the sudden transformation into a living tiger, almost died on the spot. It took over a dozen deep breaths to calm her heartbeat. She recalled the method from the original host's memory for releasing psychic power, but the more nervous and scared she was, the less she could remember. At that moment, Jolene suddenly leaped up, violently pouncing on Aloys and pinning her to the ground. Its sharp claws scraped against the floor, emitting a piercing screech. Facing a giant tiger twice her size for the first time. Even with mental preparation, she was still terrified at this moment. The tiger's fangs were right before her eyes. Aloys could even feel the fishy, hot breath blowing on her face. Just as she was in despair, her face was suddenly swept by a rough tongue, licking her tears clean. Aloys was stunned by the sudden action, and the tiger's eyes, originally bloodshot from frenzy, now held a trace of confusion in their crimson depths. She instinctively raised her hand to stroke its jaw, soothing it as if comforting a little kitten. Slowly, a gentle, psychic power surged from her mind. Jolene's movements halted for a moment. The frenzied psychic power began to ease. Its claws gradually loosened. Its massive body slowly collapsed, returning to human form and falling into unconsciousness. Aloys had lost too much psychic power at once. Her head throbbed with the swollen pain. Finally, she actually fainted as well. An hour later, Jolene slowly woke up. When he saw Aloys lying not far away, his pupils slightly contracted. He recalled Aloys's past actions. Back then, she would often beat or scold them, never treating them as human. Yet today, when he was in a frenzied state and his life was in danger, she actually chose to save him. At this moment, his emotions were somewhat complicated. Looking at Aloys's weakened appearance, the hatred in his heart simply could not rise. Seeing signs that Aloys might be waking up, Jolene's originally clear eyes flickered slightly before quickly closing again. He didn't know what attitude to adopt toward Aloys. Aloys opened her eyes and took a moment to collect herself. Without paying attention to Jolene still lying on the ground, she got up and walked toward the door. After returning to her own bedroom, she sat by the bed and tapped the silver bracelet on her left wrist. She wanted to learn about this world's information, but accidentally opened an encrypted file. The first thing that met her eyes was a floor covered with plucked red feathers, and a red-haired boy with broken wings. The bare wings hung from the boy's back in an extremely twisted posture. The bloody scene churned Jun Yulu's stomach, almost making her vomit. With trembling hands, she closed the interface. No wonder in the original plot, she died so miserably. It was absolutely deserved. A name involuntarily surfaced in her mind. The youth in the image was called Corentine. He was the prince sent from Fayuxing for a political marriage. Aloys unconsciously swallowed. How could they possibly coexist peacefully now? She should just pack up and run away. At that moment, a cautious knock came from outside the door from the boy with the missing ear. "Your Highness, Corantine's condition has worsened. He has now been sent to the medical pod for treatment." Aloys took a deep breath. After much thought, she decided to try and make amends. When she arrived at the medical pod, Corentine was already awake. The moment he saw her, his eyes filled with disgust mixed with the trace of fear. "What are you doing here? If I said I was just worried and came to check on you, would you believe it?" Aloys ventured cautiously. Corentine didn't even want to look at her now. He snorted coldly and turned his head away, refusing to look at her. "Fine. I just came to see if you were dead." Hearing this, Corentine whipped his head around to stare at her. "I'm afraid I've disappointed your highness. I didn't die. Actually, I came to apologize. What happened before was my fault. It won't happen again." Aloys spoke, believing herself to be very sincere. But Corentine gritted his teeth, forcing the words out through them. "Do you even remember what you did? You think one apology can just wipe the slate clean? Impossible. Then how about setting you free? You probably really want to go home." Who knew that as soon as she said this, Corentine's eyes instantly reddened. His voice also involuntarily rose. "You wicked, malicious female actually want to drive me away. I tell you. Impossible." Aloys was speechless. Setting him free, and he's still unwilling. Isn't this just pure masochism? What Aloys actually didn't know was, in this era, once a beastman is disliked and driven out of the home by his wife-master, it is equivalent to a woman in ancient times being divorced and thrown out by her husband's family. If Corentine were sent back home, he would become the disgrace of the entire planet. Aloys looked at his aggrieved yet stubborn appearance. A strange feeling couldn't help but stir in her heart. "Corentine, I apologize for my previous actions." Aloys's voice softened a little. I promise I will never bully you again." Hearing this, Corentine's anger subsided slightly. But he still didn't believe it. Aloys took a deep breath and still stated the purpose of her coming. "Let me look at your wings." Who knew that as soon as these words left her mouth, Corentine roared like a tiger whose tail had been stepped on. "Get out! I never want to see you again." He knew this vicious female had ill intentions. Treating him was just to toy with him better. Sigh. "Don't be angry, don't be angry. You'll end up in the treatment pod again later." Aloys knew that the current Corentine simply wouldn't listen to anything she said. So she simply turned and left. "Then you have a good rest. I will come to see you again tomorrow." Watching her leave just like that without even turning her head. For some reason, Corentine became even angrier. Aloys did not return to her room. Instead, she took a detour to Sherwin's place. What met her eyes was a large purple snake, coiled into a ball on the ground. The purple scales were very beautiful. The only flaw was that they were incomplete. The snake scales in many places had been torn off, revealing small black pits one after another. Just looking at these wounds made her feel pain. "I'm sorry." At that moment, the large snake suddenly moved slightly, then quieted down again. Aloys softly spoke. "I will find a way to help treat your wounds." At that moment, the large snake suddenly opened its eyes. The dark green snake eyes showed no emotional fluctuation, but the voice was full of mockery. "Treat me. With what will you help treat me?" The treatment pod can only repair other internal and external injuries. It simply cannot achieve regenerative abilities. "I will find a way to help you recover completely." The photographer snorted coldly and ignored her again. For his scales to grow back, it would take at least a year. The severed snake tail would need at least 3 years to regrow properly. As for the words of this vicious female, he did not believe a single word. "I know my previous actions hurt you, but please give me some time. I will prove it to you." Sherwin pretended not to hear her words, closed his eyes and returned to a motionless state. Aloys also did not plan to stay and be a nuisance, so she left first. And what she said about treatment was an empty talk. It turned out her laboratory and planting space had also followed her through the transmigration. In her previous life, as a genius pharmacist, she was practically adept with all kinds of potions. It just required time for experimentation. She kept tinkering in the space until midnight, before returning to her bedroom to rest. The next day, Aloys went to check on her neighbor's condition. He was leaning against the headboard, reading the latest online public opinion. The Empire was still at war with the Zerg army. As the Empire's youngest major general, if not for his physical condition, he would have long been on the battlefield. Upon seeing Aloys, he made a move to get up and salute, but was stopped by Aloys. Yesterday was her first time using psychic power for soothing, and she wasn't sure if it had all been properly soothed, so she came today to check again. Jolene obediently lay on the bed, motionless, letting her examine. Gentle psychic power followed Aloys's fingertips, slowly invading Jolene's psychic sea. She found his psychic sea in utter chaos. She guided her psychic power, bit by bit, to clear it, slowly untangling the intertwined psychic strands. By the time she withdrew her hand, a thin layer of sweat had already appeared on her forehead. Just as she prepared to stand up, she felt a sudden darkness before her eyes, her whole body losing balance as she pitched forward, falling straight into Jolene's embrace. Jolene lowered his eyelids, looking at Aloys's slightly pale face from overusing psychic energy, remaining silent. Jolene, however, did not let go. His gaze was complex, as if pondering something. Jolene raised his hand and lightly gestured at her slender neck. Just a gentle squeeze, and this vicious princess would never be able to torment them again. A flicker of conflict passed through his eyes, meeting her pale face and tightly closed eyes. A trace of hesitation arose in his heart again. Finally, Jolene let out a soft sigh, placed Aloys on the bed, and covered her with the blanket. Just as he turned around, Aloys quietly opened her eyes. Watching his retreating back, the corner of her mouth lifted slightly, then quickly closed her eyes again. The bet was won. Jolene's greatest hatred towards her was her standing by during this frenzied period. Now that his frenzied period had been soothed, he probably wouldn't harbor killing intent towards her anymore. The previous injuries were, at most, considered domestic violence. As long as she didn't provoke him in the future, they could coexist peacefully. Not long after, Jolene left. She got up and departed. The top priority was to research the flesh regeneration potion. Thus, over the next few days, relying on the laboratory stock of medicinal herbs and the planting space, she continuously experimented. Finally, after 5 days, she made a breakthrough. But Aloys was not in a hurry to send this potion for her beast husbands to use. Instead, he had someone find 10 small animals for him to experiment on. Corentine felt that his body had recovered quite a bit today. Upon learning that Aloys hadn't left the house for several days, thinking he wouldn't run into her, he went to the greenhouse alone. As a Brahmini kite, Corentine had a natural affinity for these flowers and plants. He stayed in the greenhouse all morning. Just as he was about to head back, he saw Aloys's figure appear at the greenhouse entrance. Corentine watched as she took a sharp knife from the small bag at her waist, then cut the little white mice, and afterward took a bottle of strange blue transparent liquid and poured it onto their wounds. Several of the white mice seemed unable to bear it, rolling around incessantly in the cage. Corentine witnessed all of this from a corner of the greenhouse. His heart tightened with the cries of the small animals. This vicious female truly is cruel. When he saw Aloys take a flame chicken from a larger cage, expressionlessly break its wings, and then pluck its feathers one by one, Corentine could no longer stay put. She must have known he was here, deliberately putting on this show for him. This was her warning to him. Corentine rushed out with eyes blazing red. Aloys, how can you be so cruel? Aloys, however, continued her actions without even looking up, and even asked him to help hold down the swallow hen to inject them with the potion. Hearing this, Corentine angrily snatched the potion from her hand and smashed it on the ground. Isn't torturing them enough? You still want to inject them with this kind of thing? Are you even human? Aloys watched the painstakingly developed potion being smashed to pieces, trembling with rage all over. Get out of my sight! Corentine glared at her with bloodshot eyes, finally left filled with burning anger. And Aloys took out another dose of the potion, began injecting the injured small animals. After doing all this, she caught a snake and cut off its tail, then took out a small bottle of blue liquid and poured it on the severed part. Soon, the wound gradually healed. 30 minutes later, Aloys discovered that those injected with the potion recovered somewhat faster. Their mental state was also noticeably better. Only the snake's severed tail and the flame chicken's bald wings had not yet regrown. She locked them in separate cages and then left. After returning, he instructed that those 3 beastmen come to the main courtyard for dinner tonight, then went to the kitchen to start preparing tonight's meal. Most of the interstellar food was unfamiliar meats, but she decided to try using Earth's cooking methods to handle these ingredients. The small figure busied herself in the kitchen. The aroma in the kitchen grew richer and richer. Jolene, upon entering the main courtyard, was immediately drawn by the fragrance wafting from the kitchen. He had been fighting wars away from home for years, mostly consuming nutrient paste. Such an unusual fragrance made his feet involuntarily walk towards the kitchen. When he saw Jun Yunuo's busy figure, for a moment, a rare look of astonishment appeared on his face. Females are scarce in the interstellar realm. The more delicate ones even need to be fed their meals, let alone entering the kitchen. Not to mention that Aloys, being a princess, shouldn't even know which way the kitchen door opens. So how could she possibly cook? This unfamiliar Jun Yunuo made him deeply suspicious, so he tried to offer help, but was refused by Aloys. However, Jolene still entered the kitchen, helping with chopping vegetables and cleaning up kitchen waste. And he, perhaps fearing she might poison the food. Soon after, Corentine and Snake Shadow arrived one after another. Sherwin resumed his usual aloofness. Corentine, because of the incident in the garden this morning, was filled with resentment towards Jun Yuluo. But upon seeing Jolene and the other busy in the kitchen, they both showed looks of surprise. "Jolene, what are you doing? Have you forgotten how she treated you before?" Jolene slightly raised her eyes, her gaze carrying a hint of authority. "Corentine, do not be disrespectful to Her Highness." Corentine wanted to say more, but seeing Jolene's expression, she had no choice but to close her mouth. Sherwin watched quietly without speaking. Hearing Corentine's words, Alois felt no ripple in her heart. "The food will be ready soon. Please wait in the living room." Alois's voice was unusually calm, not angered by Corentine's rudeness. After a while, all the dishes were prepared. Alois and Jolene together brought the food to the dining room. Corentine and Sherwin were already sitting at the dining table waiting. The two had different expressions. Both were guessing in their hearts the reason Alois had suddenly brought them together. "Let's eat." Alois knew that if she didn't start eating, none of them would dare to move. So she first picked up a piece of meat and tasted it. Jolene carefully picked up a piece and put it in her mouth. Instantly, her eyes lit up. The taste was even better than she had expected. Sherwin, seeing Jolene had eaten without issue, also picked up his chopsticks and started eating. He originally just intended to take a few casual bites, but didn't expect the taste to be surprisingly good. He couldn't help but eat a few more mouthfuls. Only Corentine refused to eat. Alois didn't indulge him either. Not being able to eat such good food was his loss. Hearing Alois's words, Corentine grew even more annoyed in his heart. But that enticing aroma kept drifting into his nose, making his stomach betray him with an audible rumble. He pursed his lips tightly and turned his head to the side, trying hard not to look at the delicious food. Jolene, seeing the state of the two, frowned slightly. "Corentine, this is the dinner His Highness prepared with great effort. Eat a little at least." With this stepping stone offered, Corentine reluctantly and unwillingly picked up his chopsticks, muttering that it tasted bad. Yet his hands moved swiftly. By the end of the meal, he had eaten the most. When they had eaten almost enough, Alois finally spoke up about the purpose of calling them here tonight. "This is the new potion I have developed. It has a very good effect on wound healing." She took out 2 identical potions from the space, just as she expected. The few people simply didn't believe her potion was useful. Corentine was even blunt. "If you want to poison us, you can just say so. No need to go through all this trouble." Alois knew they wouldn't believe so easily. She had already asked King Ruin to bring those small experimental animals from the greenhouse. Sherwin and Jolene were somewhat confused, but Corentine reacted strongly. These were the few mice he saw in the greenhouse today that were cruelly abused by Alois. The flame chicken's broken wing had already recovered completely. The wing that originally had all its feathers plucked had already grown a ring of downy feathers. Alois looked at the snake whose tail had been cut off. A small section of tender pink snake tail had already grown back. Corentine's eyes widened, his face full of disbelief. "How is this possible? These were clearly the small animals you abused until they were covered in wounds." Alois's expression was calm. "I did not abuse them. I was just conducting experiments. Injuring them was only to verify the potion's efficacy." At the same time, she opened her light computer and pulled up the scene of the experiments in the greenhouse. Sherwin and Jolene exchanged a glance, their eyes also full of shock. Especially Sherwin, when he saw Alois cut off the snake's tail without changing her expression. It was as if that cut was on his own tail. But upon seeing the regrown snake tail, thinking of his own similarly severed snake tail, that lifeless heart seemed to stir slightly. On one hand, he still felt full of doubt and aversion towards Elisisa Tyans. On the other hand, the regrowing snake tail was like a ray of hopeful dawn, making him unable to resist fantasizing whether his own severed tail might also have the possibility of regrowing. Aloys looked at the three's differing expressions, pursed her lips slightly, and said solemnly, "I know you can't trust me right now. I also don't deny the harm I've caused you before. I apologize to you for what happened earlier. The original host nearly got them killed several times. She really should say a proper sorry to them. Now that she has taken over this body, she must take responsibility for the original host's mistakes. Of course, more importantly, for her own little life. I won't bully you anymore in the future. To show my apology, you can make one request of me." Hearing this, the three of them looked over in unison. Jolene was silent for a long time before tentatively speaking. "The border war hasn't stopped. I want to return to the battlefield." "Are you sure?" Jolene nodded solemnly. "I hope your highness will grant this." "All right, but you must wait." 1 week later, Jolene almost thought she had misheard. A rare look of astonishment appeared on her face. Even Sherwin and Corentine were equally incredulous. Just then, the robot butler brought over 3 different breeds of small animals. Aloys got up from the dining table. "I'm tired. If you want to experiment, find a place to do it yourselves. It's just that there isn't much of this potion. Don't waste it." After saying that, she yawned and walked upstairs. She hadn't had a proper rest for several consecutive days. The next day, the marshal's wife came very early. Aloys had just gotten up. After washing up, she casually ate something to fill her stomach. Then she headed towards the reception room. Upon seeing the marshal's wife, Isabel Dina, she was stunned for a moment. The marshal's wife was nearly 100 years old. Yet her appearance showed no signs of aging. Her demeanor was elegant and noble, fully displaying the bearing of a great lady. Upon seeing Aloys, she respectfully bowed and greeted her. Aloys clearly understood the purpose of her visit, but she was in no hurry. However, the marshal's wife was very anxious. Rumors were spreading outside that her son's spiritual sea had been destroyed. Although Jolene had reported that she was safe, she still felt uncertain. But since Aloys didn't speak, even if she was anxious, she dared not question. If she angered this temperamental princess, her son's future days would likely be even more difficult. Several minutes passed like this. Aloys then leisurely spoke up. "Madam, what brings you to see me today?" Upon hearing this, Dina hurriedly stood up. "Your Highness, we heard that Jolene was injured. The family is truly worried about his safety. Today, I presumptuously brought a physician along. I hope your Highness will forgive me." In this era where females are scarce, once a beastman forms a bond. Both body and mind belong solely to his wife, and everything he does must be approved by her. Even his own parents cannot be visited freely, let alone when her son has entered the royal household. If the princess does not permit her to see him, there is nothing they can do. Once a bonded beastman enters a frenzied period, only the partner's spiritual guidance is effective. Other females attempting spiritual will only backfire. Aloys finished the tea in her mouth. "Madam need not worry. Jolene's condition has stabilized, and she only needs proper rest to recover fully." Hearing this, the marshal's wife finally breathed a sigh of relief. "Thank you, princess. I imagine he is awake by now. Madam, why not accompany me to visit him?" The marshal's wife was overjoyed upon hearing this and nodded repeatedly, immediately rising to follow Aloys. Meanwhile, Jolene was exercising in the courtyard. His posture was upright, every movement full of strength. Sunlight spilled over his bronze skin, highlighting his robust physique as a beastman. Hearing footsteps, Jolene stopped his movements and warily looked toward the entrance. When he saw Aloys and the marshal's wife, a flicker of surprise first flashed in his eyes, especially at the moment he saw his mother. That surprise became even more pronounced. The marshal's wife, upon seeing Jolene, immediately hurried forward. Her eyes were filled with concern and heartache. She looked Jolene up and down, her voice trembling slightly. "Jolene, child, why aren't you resting properly? You've already started exercising." Jolene looked at her mother, a warm current surging in her heart. "Mother, I'm fine. I bear heavy responsibilities. I can't slack off just because of a minor injury." His eyes revealed a strong sense of responsibility and mission. It was impossible not to be moved. Aloys looked at Jolene, a flash of admiration in her eyes. She slightly raised the corner of her mouth. "It seems you're recovering well. But you must also be careful not to overdo it. Don't rush." Jolene gave a slight nod. "Thank you for your concern, Your Highness. I will know my limits." Aloys nodded and turned to leave. Leaving the space to them, Jolene watched her departing figure. A genuine sense of gratitude welled up from the bottom of her heart. Her Highness really seems different now. Aloys got back on the smart machine car and headed towards Corantine's residence. She had a feeling that Corentine, with his proud, arrogant, and explosive temper, would not obediently take his medicine. She had to make them recover within a month. Early next month was when the other affiliated planets would come to deliver tribute. As those sent from affiliated planets, for a political marriage, they definitely had to attend. If someone with ill intentions discovered they were injured and made an issue of it, even if they were not favored in their original planets, those envoys would use this point to attack her. In the original plot of the book, both individuals along with Jolene were severely injured and have not yet. Aloys simply could not attend this banquet, such an important banquet, and not one of her 3 consorts accompanied her. This alone sparked heated discussion. Later, videos of her torturing people were exposed, instantly causing a huge uproar. After the envoys from these 2 affiliated planets learned of this, they directly lodged a strong protest, demanding an explanation from their planet, Kalen. It was precisely because this cruel scene of abuse was exposed in front of the alien envoys, coupled with the fact that the Empire's general was reduced to a cripple because of her perverse and twisted amusement. She, Aloys, the most noble princess of the Kalen Empire, became utterly infamous. Under pressure from all sides, her father, the king, and mother, the queen, had no choice but to hand her over to quell the public outrage. And this decision undoubtedly laid the foundation for her miserable ending of not dying well. Aloys clenched her fists and secretly made up her mind. Absolutely must not repeat the original owner's mistakes. After a short while, the smart robotic vehicle arrived at Corantine's residence. Aloys took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and walked in. In the room, Corentine was sitting there with a look of impatience. Seeing Aloys enter, he immediately frowned. "What are you doing here?" Seeing his appearance, Aloys knew he definitely hadn't taken the medicine. She patiently tried to persuade him. "Corentine, you should understand your own injuries. Only by taking the medicine properly can you recover quickly." But Corentine wouldn't listen at all and angrily said, "I don't want to use your medicine. You wicked female. You tormented us like that before. Don't be hypocritical now." Seeing him so stubborn, Aloys's face darkened. She directly ordered the robot beside her, "Hold him down." The robot quickly moved and firmly held Corentine down. Corentine struggled with all his might. His eyes burned with anger, his limbs twisting constantly, trying to break free from the robot's restraint. But the robot's strength was immense. His resistance was utterly useless. Aloys took out a syringe from her space, and without hesitation injected it into his arm. After injecting the medicine, she had the robot strip off his clothes, preparing to apply medicine to his wings. Corentine was completely uncooperative in every way. His wings cannot be medicated unless they are spread out. There's no other way. He can only use psychic force to make him submit. Corentine glared at her with full of resentment. But under the powerful psychic pressure, he was helpless. Aloys met his hateful gaze, took out a glass bottle the size of a fist, began to wipe his plucked feathers, bare wings, Corentine wore a look of humiliation. He struggled violently again. A furious roar erupted from his throat. He wanted to curse, but his mouth was covered by a robot, only able to make muffled sounds. After applying the medicine, Aloys looked at Corentine and said with a serious tone, "Corentine, I'm doing this for your own good. I hope you recover soon. Don't play games with your health. No one will feel sorry for you." After saying that, she turned and left the room, leaving Corentine there filled with indignation, his eyes fixed intently on Aloys's departing figure. The fury in his heart seemed ready to set the entire room ablaze. Aloys, however, cheerfully hummed a tune. After Aloys left, Corentine secretly swore that once he had the chance, he would definitely make Aloys pay. He hadn't yet figured out how to take revenge on this vicious female. A searing pain shot from behind. The pain nearly made him lose his footing. Corentine gritted his teeth, forcing himself not to fall. The color drained from his face. Fine beads of sweat broke out on his forehead. That wretched female, Aloys. He didn't know what medicine Aloys had given him. It was actually causing such intense pain. This was hardly for his own good. It clearly wanted his life. Corentine struggled to move to the edge of the bed and slowly sat down, trying to alleviate the pain behind him. His mind kept conjuring up various methods to get revenge on Aloys, but each one felt insufficient to vent his hatred. Just then, the room door was suddenly pushed open. Aloys had returned again. However, she didn't enter, just poked her head inside. Seeing Corentine's pained appearance, she was slightly startled and quickly said, I just forgot to tell you. This medicine. Get out." Corentine, enduring the pain, forced out a single word with effort. "I know you're in a lot of pain right now. That's what I wanted to say. This medicine will cause some pain when applied." She added a flower with potent medicinal effects. It accelerates healing. But the process isn't very pleasant. Exactly how painful, she hadn't experienced it herself. Seeing him like this, it must be extremely painful. Just bear with it. I'll come again tomorrow. After saying that, she pulled the door shut and swiftly slipped away. In order not to favor one over the other, she naturally treated everyone equally. Compared to Corentine, whose wings were broken and feathers plucked, Sherwin's injuries were more severe. The plucked snake scales could grow back, but his severed snake tail was even harder to regrow. He also didn't know how effective this improved potion would be. After all, beastmen were different from ordinary snakes. Soon, his figure appeared in Snake Shadow's courtyard. Sherwin held the empty potion vial, examining it carefully. Before he was sent here for the marriage alliance, he had been a student at their star system's potion academy and had some understanding of potions. He knew the potion Aloys gave them was a healing potion. Judging by its purity, it seemed more effective than those on the market. He injected it directly the night he returned, but his injuries were too severe, so the effect wasn't very noticeable. At this moment, he was sitting by the window. Sunlight slanted across his handsome profile, adding a touch of lazy, wicked charm. Aloys was momentarily stunned. There was no denying Sherwin was the best looking among her 3 beast husbands. After a few seconds of daze, Aloys quickly snapped back to reality. She gave a light cough to cover her lapse. Hearing the noise, Sherwin slowly lifted his head. His purple eyes turned toward Aloys, with a hint of doubt and wariness in his gaze. Aloys walked forward, trying hard to offer a natural smile. "How do you feel? Did the potion have any effect?" "Thanks to your highness's favor, I'm already fine." His tone was distant, tinged with a trace of mockery. The suffering he had endured made him deeply distrustful of Aloys. He didn't believe this female truly meant him well. Aloys naturally detected the mockery in his tone. The original host had hurt them too deeply. It was normal for them not to easily believe her words. "This is today's dose of medicine. Let me help you with the injection." Sherwin watched as Aloys drew closer and closer. A strange emotion welled up in his heart. Having lacked love since childhood, he desperately craved to be loved. When he learned that the princess of the Kalan Empire had taken a liking to him, he had also felt joy and longing. But now, the very person who had tortured him into this state was hypocritically coming to show concern for him. Why? Aloys was slightly taken aback, then she showed a faint, remorseful smile. I know I hurt you in the past. The harm is done, and I won't deny it. Now, I just want to help you recover properly. If you don't believe me, I can swear to the beast god. From now on, I will not harm you. Sherwin remained silent for a moment, then gently nodded, although not entirely convinced. It seemed he had no other choice. Seeing the snake shadow nod, Aloys felt a slight relief in her heart. She carefully opened the medicine vial, took out the syringe, and gently administered the injection for Sherwin. After the injection, Aloys said softly, "Rest well, I'll come see you again tomorrow." Having said that, she prepared to leave. Just as she turned around, Sherwin suddenly spoke. "Can you really promise never to hurt me again?" Aloys stopped, turned back, and looked firmly into Sherwin's eyes. "Aloys, swear to the beast god that I will never harm Sherwin again. The beast god truly exists in this world. Traditionally, only beastmen swear oaths to the beast god. No female would ever risk making such a vow for a beastman. In their minds, if one beastman is gone, countless others await their favor. They simply don't care about the pain suffered by the beastmen they hurt and abandon." Sherwin looked into Aloys's eyes. The wavering in his heart grew increasingly strong. For several consecutive days, Aloys delivered potions on time each day. Concerned about the recovery of Sherwin's injuries, Sherwin's wounds gradually improved. A new tail had already grown out. Slowly, Sherwin's wariness towards Jun Yuluo began to ease. He didn't know if, after he fully recovered, Aloys would still treat him this way. He began to take the initiative to communicate with Aloys. Aloys learned that he had considerable insight into potions, and would occasionally discuss potion knowledge with him. Of course, she didn't forget to apply medicine to Corentine either. On the other side, Corentine looked at himself, at the pale yellow down growing on his wings. A complex emotion welled up in his heart. On one hand, he felt joy at the improvement of his injuries. On the other hand, he grew even more conflicted about Aloys's attitude. He began to ponder. The medicine Aloys used on him was indeed effective. Could it be that she truly meant well for him? Yet the torment she inflicted on him before remained vivid in his memory. He couldn't easily let it go. Corentine struggled alone in the room for a long time. Anger and entanglement constantly intertwined in his heart. If she apologized to him again today, he would reluctantly forgive her. But he waited in the room all day, and that bad female never came. It wasn't until the next night that he saw her again. He had even prepared to cooperate with her for the medicine application. But as soon as this bad female arrived, she directly had the robot pin him down. She directly injected the medicine. "This medicine will temporarily numb your sense of taste. It won't last long, don't be nervous." Corentine snorted coldly and turned his head away. He didn't want to pay attention to her. Aloys wasn't angry either. She just silently walked to his side to check his wings. "Your recovery is better than I imagined. In a few more days, you will be fully healed," Aloys said. Corentine's heart stirred, but his words remained tough. "Don't be hypocritical. I won't be grateful to you." Aloys smiled. "I don't need your gratitude. Just don't turn dark and take it out on me." As the days passed, Corentine's injuries gradually healed. His wings grew full feathers again. The crimson feathers seemed even more vibrant than before. Corentine's view of Aloys was also slowly changing in his heart. This bad female, Aloys, seemed to have really changed for the better. Since Jolene had not shown up all along, Aloys had Zhao Qi block his messages again. The rumors outside are getting worse and worse. Everyone is spreading that his mental sea might already be ruined. Recently, many drones have been hovering near the princess's mansion, all wanting to capture first-hand information. This royal princess is really too much. General Jolene fought desperately for the country and was severely injured. As his wife, she actually refuses to treat him and deliberately delays, endangering his life. It's simply unreasonable. How can such a selfish and cold-hearted person be worthy of being a royal princess? Her actions are truly disheartening. How disappointed the soldiers at the border must be. I hope the Empire severely punishes this selfish princess. To seek justice for General Jolene, and to give an explanation to the border soldiers, Aloys looked at the online public's curses and outcry of injustice for Jolene, and smiled silently. She had the AI Zhao Qi dig out the first batch of rumor mongers and meticulously record them. Slandering and insulting a female without cause is a punishable offense. Not to mention she is a national princess. Spreading nonsense and disrupting military morale is an even greater crime. Host. The rumors originated from the female lead's admirers. Aloys wasn't surprised. Too bad she's going to be disappointed. Leave him be for now. Record everyone on the Star Net who has slandered or insulted me. Prepare a list to send to the Female Protection Alliance later. Here, there's no such thing as the law not punishing the multitude. Apart from being lenient towards females, interstellar laws are extremely strict towards beastmen. All beastmen must be responsible for their own behavior. The Female Protection Alliance will determine their charges based on the severity of their insults. Light offenses result in fines. Serious offenses lead to detention and punishment. After several days of rest, Jolene's body has recovered to peak condition. There is still 1 month before the insectoid army withdraws. It is time for Jolene to appear in the public eye. No amount of talking is as intimidating as Jolene directly appearing on the battlefield. Soon after, Aloys ordered someone to bring Jolene. Jolene stands tall, with a determined gaze, showing no signs of having suffered serious injuries. Aloys slightly nods while looking at Jolene. I presume the rumors outside have also been seen by the Admiral. This princess does not need you to clarify anything. What was promised to you shall now be fulfilled. The battleship is ready. You may depart at any time. Jolene slightly frowns, seemingly not understanding her intention. If in the past someone dared to speak of her like this, they would have been dealt with long ago. How does the princess plan to resolve the online? Compared to these trivial matters, going to battle and repelling the insectoids is what you should do. Aloys slightly rises, having Jolene appear directly before everyone. Can temporarily quell rumors, but the effect may not last. If he quietly arrives at the border and appears at the critical moment, not only will the rumors be self-defeating, but it will also deliver a fatal blow to the Zerg army. Jolene fell silent for a moment, then solemnly nodded. Your Highness, rest assured. Jolene will certainly fulfill the mission with honor. Aloys thought for a moment and still handed the item in her hand to him. This is a potion I developed specifically for the Zerg toxin. If accidentally injured, apply the liquid to the wound. Although it cannot detoxify, it can inhibit the spread of the toxin and will not harm spiritual power. A ripple stirred in Jolene's previously calm and unruffled eyes, slowly gathering into shock. Is what your Highness says true? The damage the Zerg's toxin does to their beastmen's spiritual power, he knew all too well from personal experience. If this thing can truly inhibit the spread of the toxin, the casualties among beastmen warriors on the battlefield would be reduced by more than half. I would not joke about such matters. It's just that time was tight. I only managed to develop this much. She waved her hand casually, and over 50 fist-sized glass bottles appeared on the table. Jolene looked at those over 50 bottles of inhibitor potion and felt an indescribable surge of emotion in his heart. He solemnly stored these potions in his space button, his eyes filled with determination. Your Highness's grace, Jolene will never forget. If I can return alive, I will repay you with my life. Jolene knelt on one knee and gave Alois a solemn military salute. Alois gave a slight nod, reaching out to help Jolene up. I await your triumphant return. Remember, you are my ORC Aloises. Don't embarrass me. You must come back alive. Jolene stands up. In his eyes, besides fighting spirit, there is a trace of an indescribable, strange emotion. He takes a deep look at Alois, turns and strides away. Alois watches Jolene's receding figure. Her mind recalls the book's description of this battle. But she simply cannot remember. Back then, she was only focused on reading about the female lead acquiring husbands. She paid little attention to the warriors serving as background. She only knows that not long after the alien invasion, the war ended. In the original book, Jolene did not participate in the final battlefield. This time, he returns to the battlefield. Presumably, there will be different changes. No matter what, she hopes the war ends soon. In the days after Jolene's departure, Alois was not idle either. She continued to immerse herself in research on the Zerg toxin, hoping to find a complete antidote. At the same time, she closely followed the border war, gathering intelligence through various channels. Rumors on the Star Network are still boiling and spreading. Alois looks at the comments on the new network with the calm expression. She knows that for now, letting these rumors spread. When Jolene appears at the border, these rumors will collapse on their own. Compared to this, she has more important things to do. Next, Alois frees up time. Plan her planting space well. Whether it's due to soil quality or climate, or a severe lack of planting methods, plants here struggle to survive. Helpless, she could only turn her attention to the system Zhao Qi. Under her persistent pestering, Zhao Qi finally relented and opened an exchange mall for her. When Alois entered this mall to look, it was filled with various low-priced plant seeds. The rich variety instantly dazzled her. Many she didn't recognize, so she selected several types of common vegetable seeds, fruit seedlings, and rice seeds. As a genuine Chinese person, not eating rice for a day feels like not having eaten at all. Her most urgent task was to grow rice. She carefully picked a bunch of seeds in the mall, full of joy, ready to check out, only to find that star coins couldn't be used. She had no money to buy them. May I ask if you choose to barter or use trade coins? As she secretly gritted her teeth, a cold mechanical voice sounded. Trade coins. Where would she get trade coins? As for bartering, she really couldn't think of anything she had that could be used for exchange. Just as she was troubled, the voice came again. Detected that you possess a tradable item. One healing potion can be exchanged for 10 million trade coins. Do you wish to proceed with the exchange? Alois never expected that the half-finished potion she brewed would be so valuable, so she joyfully exchanged it for the vegetable seeds she had previously selected, adding fruit saplings and rice seeds to the shopping cart together. Seeing that she had bought almost enough, she clicked checkout without hesitation. Looking at the pile of items now in front of her, she thought about which one to start with. She was still mentally calculating how to efficiently utilize such a large plot of land. Zhao Qi casually waved a hand, and something magical happened. That vast expanse of land was instantly plowed into neat rows. Alois widened her eyes, her heart filled with shock and amazement. She immediately set about preparing to sow the seeds, carefully planting the vegetable seeds, fruit saplings, and rice seeds in suitable areas according to each seed's requirements. As she busied herself, she imagined the vibrant scene this land would have in the future. With Zhao Qi's assistance, tasks like watering and fertilizing also became easy and efficient. Alois watched in amazement as the seeds she had just planted began to sprout in less than 10 minutes, her heart full of astonishment. As time passed, bit by bit, the sprouts grew at an astonishing speed. Alois had to come to the planting space more and more frequently to carry out work like watering, fertilizing, and weeding to help her better manage the planting space. Zhao Qi transmitted the most comprehensive planting guide into her mind. Soon, under her meticulous care, the vegetables sprouted tender green leaves. The fruit seedlings also began to thrive. The rice paddies were even more vibrant and full of life. She pulled out the mature vegetables and brought them out of the space, handing them over to the cooking robot for processing. Finally, she got to eat the long-craved Chinese cabbage. She then had the robot deliver some to Sherwin and Corentine. It was the first time they had tasted such fresh greens. Corentine directly hugged it and took a raw bite. Although puzzled about where this food came from, they both tacitly refrained from asking. Alois pondered to herself, since she couldn't reasonably send the beast husbands away, given that they were handsome and had great figures, keeping them around wasn't so bad. When Corentine received the fruit delivered by the robot, he was so shocked he couldn't close his mouth. In this era, fruit was an extremely luxurious thing. Even one that didn't look very appealing would sell for several hundred star coins each. Something so expensive was only bought by females. Beastmen couldn't bear to eat it. Now, looking at a full basket of different varieties of fruit, his heart was filled with joy and surprise. He had always been clear about love and hate. He once harbored hatred toward Alois, but ever since Alois healed his injuries, that hatred dissipated like smoke, leaving no trace. Even though his heart was blooming with happiness, his mouth still wouldn't relent. Slightly raising his chin, he snorted. At least she has a bit of a conscience. And Sherwin is exactly the opposite of him. He appears indifferent even towards food demons, but in reality, he craves attention more than anyone else. A little bit of care can make him remember it for a long time. This is also related to his experiences. When receiving the fruits sent by Alois, a flicker of surprise flashed in his eyes, but it was quickly concealed by him. He just slightly nodded and said, "Please thank Her Highness for me." In the following days, although the three did not meet, Alois would have the robot deliver some different fruits and vegetables for them to taste every day. On this day, Alois found a purple crystal pendant on the stone table in her own courtyard. It was very beautiful. She couldn't resist picking it up to look at it. The tip of her nose was surrounded by the unique scent of Sherwin. She was stunned for a long time. This is Sherwin's heart scale. Unless voluntary, the heart scale of the snake clan cannot be removed by others. Only when the subject is willing does the heart scale automatically fall off. In the original plot, not only the original host, but even the female lead did not get his heart scale. Why would he suddenly give her such an important thing? The item in her hand suddenly felt scalding. Having thoroughly read Beast World books, she understands too well the significance of this thing. Sherwin is courting her. This is just too sudden. Host. Sherwin's mating season is approaching. Little Seven lying nearby, watching the show. Out of nowhere came such a sentence. Alois's hand trembled. The pendant in her hand fell to the ground. Her heart also gave a sudden jump. Slowly squatting down, she reached out to pick up the pendant. The icy touch gradually cleared her thoughts. She recalled the description of Sherwin in the plot. That seemingly cold and indifferent man actually harbored an intense desire for attention deep inside. She had merely given him some food, yet it had earned her such a precious gift. Alois stood up, her heart filled with mixed emotions. She knew all too well what the beastman's mating season meant. It was a powerful physiological need and emotional impulse. If he weren't a snake, she might have been willing to give it a try with him. But he's a snake. And there are two. Ugh. Yuck. What is she thinking? Indeed, the mind can be corrupted by reading those dirty books. Maybe she should take the pendant and ask him what he meant by it. But then again, he didn't explicitly say he gave it to her. What if he accidentally dropped it? She would be the one embarrassed in the end. Better pretend not to know for now. Thinking this, she held the pendant and turned back to the house. Unbeknownst to her, coiled on a branch in the corner, was a thumb-sized purple snake, its gaze fixed on her all along. Only after seeing her take the pendant back to her room did it quietly leave. Aloys returned to her room and gently placed the pendant on the table. Her gaze, however, fell upon it involuntarily, time and again. Images of Sherwin's usual demeanor surfaced unbidden in her mind. Damn, she really was hungry, not even afraid of bursting. For several days in a row, Sherwin did not make any further moves, as if she had truly misunderstood. That day, Aloys was surveying the soil quality in the backyard. She planned to plant some fruits and vegetables on the estate to throw people off the scent. But the soil here was hard and utterly unsuitable for planting. She was just wondering if she could dig some soil out from the space to neutralize it. A faint, fresh fragrance suddenly wafted past the tip of her nose. She turned her head to look and found Sherwin standing not far away, quietly watching her. Her heart skipped a beat for no reason. She didn't even notice her own breathing had slowed. Sherwin slowly approached, a hint of an elusive emotion in his eyes. Aloys was still holding the shovel half filled with dirt, just squatting on the ground, looking up at him, waiting for him to speak. However, Sherwin stopped about a meter away from her, silently watched her for a moment, then turned and left. Aloys was speechless. Her neck was sore from craning it, and he just left without saying a word. What had she been expecting? She really had overthought it. Decided to return that thing to him tonight. She gave the order for the robot to dig up this entire area of the backyard. Just as she was about to start planting the saplings, Corentine came over awkwardly. He was mumbling something as he walked, but because his voice was too soft, Aloys couldn't hear it clearly. He stopped beside her, looking at her and the fruit seedlings with a somewhat complicated expression. Aloys didn't even look up, continuing her work. "What are you doing?" Corentine finally couldn't help but ask. Aloys couldn't be bothered to answer such an obvious question. She pointed at the nearby fruit seedlings and started ordering him to work. "You came just in time. Help me put these fruit seedlings into the holes." Corentine frowned, a little disdainful, crossing his arms in front of his chest. "What's the point of planting this stuff? It won't survive anyway." As he spoke, he impatiently kicked the nearby clumps of dirt with his foot. Hearing Corentine's words, Aloys looked up. A flash of displeasure crossed her eyes. Either shut up and work, or shut up and leave. Saying it won't survive before even planting it, who wouldn't be annoyed? Corentine was intimidated by Aloys's sudden imposing manner. His facial expression stiffened for a moment. After a good while, he reluctantly squatted down, still muttering under his breath, "Hey, all you know is how to be fierce. I'm not afraid of you," he grumbled, while slowly placing the fruit seedlings into the holes. His movement seemed as if he was deliberately trying to spite someone. Aloys simply pretended not to hear, planting the fruit seedlings by herself. Not long after, Corentine started nitpicking again. "Dug so shallow. No wonder they can't survive." He frowned, looking at those holes with full of disdain. But the corner of his eye glanced at Aloys's face to observe her reaction. Aloys looked up at him, suppressing the urge to get angry. "Then you dig." Corentine was choked back, hay-fed, and reluctantly started digging holes. Digging while talking. Not even allowed to tell the truth. So tyrannical. Aloys couldn't be bothered with him. After he dug several holes, she finally said with a smile, "Yo, didn't expect you to be quite capable." Hearing this, Corentine's mouth unconsciously turned up. If he had a tail, it would be wagging up to the sky. "Of course, I can do a lot of things." "Then you're really great. Might as well dig up this whole area." Corentine's face darkened. Amidst their bickering and cooperation, the saplings were finally all planted. Aloys stood up, satisfied, looking at her own fruits of labor. She smiled and said to Corentine, "Thank you. Today, when the fruits ripen, you'll be the first to eat them." Corentine turned his head away proudly, said with indifference, Who cares about your fruits? After saying that, he strode away. Aloys watched his departing back, smiled, and shook her head. This sundeer guy is actually quite cute. After resting for a while, she began to pack up the tools, preparing to plant melons, fruits, and vegetables. Some things only feel fulfilling when you do them yourself. There are also sweet potatoes in the space. Sweet potatoes are the easiest to grow and keep alive. They have high yields and are the most suitable. Just as she was fully absorbed in planting, Corentine returned after leaving. He stood not far away, quietly watching Aloys's busy figure. A faint, almost imperceptible softness flashed in his eyes when he saw her inserting strange plant sections into the soil and burying them. He still couldn't help but speak up. What is this thing? Aloys looked up at Corentine. Sweet potatoes. Very delicious things. You'll know when the time comes. Hearing this, Corentine instinctively wanted to retort, but thinking of the fruit he ate yesterday, he pursed his lips and changed the subject. Are you sure this is how you plant them? Are you sure you're not just fooling around? Without leaves or roots, how can they survive? Although he had never planted them himself, he had seen how others did it. He had never seen anyone do it like her. Not sure. Just planting for fun. Corentine froze in place. Although he didn't understand, he still unconsciously walked to Jun Yuluo's side, picked up a nearby tool, and began helping to tidy the soil. Neither of them noticed behind them Sherwin, standing silently not far away. His eyes were cold, as if nothing around him could catch his attention, yet his gaze seemed never to leave that figure. His thin lips were pressed tightly together, exuding a sense of detachment. I don't know how long I watched. It wasn't until I saw the two of them getting closer and closer that he finally moved, stepped forward. Corentine had sensed Sherwin's presence early on. Seeing him approach wasn't a surprise. It was just that being interrupted felt a bit annoying deep down. Sherwin didn't even glance at Corentine. Walked straight to Aloys's side, squatted down and silently started helping. Aloys looked at Sherwin with some surprise. How did you get here? Sherwin slightly raised his head to look at Aloys, then quickly lowered his head to continue working. Just softly uttered an After a while, added that he was just passing by. Corentine let out a light snort, swing the hoe down hard. Accidentally hit the newly planted fruit seedling. Luckily stopped in time, only sheared off half a leaf. He glanced guiltily at Aloys, saw that she was busy chatting with Sherwin. Didn't notice his side at all. Felt even more uncomfortable inside. The look he gave Sherwin grew increasingly unfriendly. Afterwards, whatever Aloys told Sherwin to do, he would rush to do it first. Aloys gave him a somewhat amused sidelong glance. Corentine, the one you're supposed to be planting is this. Why do you keep snatching Sherwin's tasks? Hey, I just want to do his one. It's simple. Fine. Sherwin, swap with him. Sherwin didn't speak. Walked over to the side and took over Corentine's work. Corentine saw his own task had been taken. Instantly displeased again, Sherwin slowly raised his head. A trace of confusion flickered in his purple eyes, seemingly not understanding why Corentine suddenly felt so hostile toward him. Aloys couldn't be bothered with the two of them, and continued with her work. Aloys watched Corentine working diligently, and suddenly wanted to test his reaction. A glint of mischief flashed in her eyes. She deliberately extended her mud-covered hand toward Corentine. Corentine thought she wanted to wash her hands, and even specifically stopped what he was doing, only to see her hand quickly give a light swipe across Corentine's face. That originally clean face instantly gained several sticky streaks of mud. Corentine was stunned at first, seemingly not yet processing what had happened. His red eyes widened slightly, his whole person as if frozen in place, till he felt the wet, sticky sensation on his face. Did he snap back to reality? His face instantly flushed red like a ripe tomato. Aloys, what are you doing? Corentine shouted, while frantically wiping his face with his hand. trying to rub off the mud. But the more he wiped, the more smeared the mud on his face became, making him look both disheveled and comical. Aloys saw Corentin's disheveled appearance, and couldn't help but burst into loud laughter. "You wicked female! How dare you play a trick on me? Just see how I deal with you." Saying this, he threw down the water bucket. Grabbing a handful of wet mud, he charged toward Aloys. Seeing this, Aloys quickly turned and ran. The two chased each other around the small backyard. Sherwin's hand holding the watering hose tightened unconsciously. A wave of inexplicable irritation welled up in his heart. He didn't understand why he was feeling this way. He just wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. That made him feel somewhat uncomfortable. But he quickly got his emotions under control and continued watering at a leisurely pace. He lowered his head, staring at the newly planted fruit saplings at his feet. His purple eyes revealed a hint of confusion and bewilderment. He didn't understand why seeing Aloys and Corentine being so close would stir such a strange feeling within him. Sherwin took a deep breath, trying to suppress this wave of irritation. Sherwin looked at Jolene and Corentine, still laughing and playing in the yard. His Highness only shows this side of himself in front of Corentine. When facing him, His Highness is always polite and distant. Yet in front of Corentine, he can be so relaxed and at ease. From the corner of her eye, Aloys caught sight of Sherwin's departing figure. She paused slightly, but quickly averted her gaze, as if nothing had happened. She turned her head and said to Corentine with a grin, "All right, stop. Corentine, don't slack off. Get back to work." After saying that, he picked up the tools by himself and started busying himself. Aloys straightened up and stretched with a big yawn, looking at the fruits of her labor. A satisfied smile appeared on her face. "Come on, I'll treat you to a meal." Corentine said he didn't care for it, but his steps were quicker than anyone else's. After returning to his residence, Sherwin felt restless and troubled. He sat by the window, gazing at the gradually darkening sky outside. Images kept flashing through his mind, of Aloys and Corentine together. Would they, tonight? Sherwin didn't dare to think further, only feeling a wave of irritation in his heart. He stood up and paced back and forth in the room, trying to ease his emotions this way. However, the more he wanted to forget, the clearer those images appeared in his mind, especially when he thought Aloys might be with Corentine. His heart filled with anger and jealousy. He wanted to pull Aloys tightly into his arms, to make her belong only to him. It felt as if a fire was burning inside his body, but he couldn't find an outlet, making him feel unbearably hot and agitated. Even he, as slow as he was, could guess. This was the precursor to his heat cycle. While he still had some rationality, he should find a place by himself to slowly endure the difficult heat period. That night, Jolene was just about to sleep, when a knocking sound came from outside the door. Aloys slightly furrowed her brows. Who could it be at such a late hour? She got up and opened the door. She saw Sherwin standing at the doorway. Sherwin saw Jolene and opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say. Aloys looked at him, somewhat puzzled. "Sherwin, is there something wrong at such a late hour?" Sherwin's eyes revealed a trace of struggle and confusion. But thinking that she had accepted his heart scale, and he was her side husband, it was normal for him to have improper thoughts about her. His hands unconsciously clenched. His voice slightly hoarse, he called out, "Your Highness." Aloys was startled in her heart. She keenly sensed that something was off about Sherwin's state, especially the aura emanating from him made her feel an inexplicable sense of oppression. "Sherwin, what's wrong with you?" Aloys slightly furrowed her brows. She cautiously took a step back. A flash of pain passed through Sherwin's eyes. He took a step forward, trying to get closer to Aloys. "Little Seven, what's happening to him?" Aloys thought of one possibility. She involuntarily shuddered all over. "Host, his mating season was stimulated and brought forward by you. You're on your own." After saying that, little Seven slipped away. Wait! Come back! Aloys screamed in her heart. But little Seven seemed to be blocked. There was no response at all. Your Highness! Aloys snapped back to reality. Sherwin was already right in front of her. She took a deep breath, trying her best to stay calm. Sherwin, calm down first. Let's think of a way. Sherwin's breathing became rapid. His eyes were filled with desire and struggle. Your Highness, I feel so uncomfortable. The handsome man suddenly softened. Who could resist this? But remembering there were two snakes, she shuddered all over. Reading the novel, she thought snake beasts were so thrilling. Now facing it, she felt just as terrified. Sherwin's breathing grew even more rapid. His body trembled violently. Aloys looked at Sherwin's pained and restrained appearance. A flicker of pity rose in her heart. But the thought of the mating season making people uncontrollable, that flicker of pity was replaced by fear. She tried hard to steady herself. Sherwin, know you're suffering. But calm down first. I'll think of a way to help you. Sherwin tightly grabbed her arm, as if it were his only lifeline. Your Highness, I really can't control myself much longer. Aloys gritted her teeth, trying to break free from Sherwin's grip. But his strength was too great. She couldn't break free at all. Suddenly, a cool sensation touched her lips. Aloys's eyes widened. Her mind went blank instantly. Sherwin had actually kissed her. That cool sensation left her at a loss. She wanted to push Sherwin away, but her body seemed frozen, unable to move. And indeed, it was. Sherwin's legs, when did they become? Turned into a snake tail, tightly encircling her. Aloys's body ached from the constriction of the snake tail. She wanted to struggle, but couldn't break free. Once again, she experienced the physical gap between beastmen and females. Sherwin let go quickly, sensing her intense struggle. A flicker of panic flashed in his eyes, but it was soon overtaken by an uncontrollable desire. Sherwin's kiss grew more intense. He seemed to pour all his emotions into this kiss. Aloys gradually lost herself in the kiss, forgetting fear, forgetting struggle. Just as she felt herself beginning to succumb, suddenly, she heard the sound of footsteps. Your Highness, what happened? The rabbit-eared youth, King Ruin, that is, Aloys's butler. Hearing the commotion, he rushed over. Aloys felt a surge of joy in her heart. Just as she was about to speak, her mouth was tightly sealed. She could only emit muffled whimpers. King Ruin sensed something unusual and asked again. Receiving no response, he pushed the door open and walked in. Seeing the scene before him, he instantly froze in place. Sherwin, hearing the noise, slowly turned his head. A flash of killing intent passed through his eyes. He let out a low growl towards King Ruin, as if warning him not to approach. King Ruin trembled all over from the growl, but quickly regained his composure. Gritting his teeth, he pulled out a knife from his space button, pointing it at Sherwin. Let go of His Highness. Sherwin, however, seemed not to hear his words. Still tightly entwined around Aloys, his snake tail tightened a bit more. Aloys was in so much pain she wanted to curse, but with her mouth still blocked, she couldn't utter a word. King Ruin, frantic with worry, took a deep breath, steadied his emotions, and then charged forward abruptly. The knife in his hand slashed towards the snake's tail. Seeing this, Sherwin swiftly swung his tail, sending King Ruin flying out. Get out! The door closed once again. Aloys stopped struggling and began to cooperate, soothing him. Sherwin felt Aloys's cooperation, his body stiffening slightly. A flicker of surprise flashed in his eyes. Soon, that hint of surprise was drowned by overwhelming desire. However, his movements gradually became gentle. The snake tail also slightly relaxed its restraint on Aloys. Aloys gently stroked Sherwin's face. Her eyes were full of tenderness and pity. Sherwin gradually calmed down under Aloys's soothing. His eyes were no longer dazed. Instead, they were filled with deep affection as he gazed at Aloys. Your Highness. His voice was hoarse and low, carrying endless attachment. Aloys slightly raised her head, and gently placed a kiss on the serpent's lips. "Sherwin, don't be afraid. I will always stay by your side." Her voice was gentle and lingering, as if possessing a magical power that made Sherwin's heart instantly settle down. Sherwin's body began to change. The snake tail slowly disappeared, restoring his human form. The next moment, a pain shot through his neck. Sherwin widened his eyes in shock. He instinctively raised his hand to cover his neck. His eyes filled with disbelief and hurt. "Your Highness, why? Why don't you want me?" Aloys silently put away the empty syringe back into her space. A flicker of reluctance flashed in her eyes. But soon, rationality returned. She did not like being forced. Sherwin's body began to sway. Before falling into unconsciousness, he used his last bit of strength to look at Aloys, his eyes full of attachment and reluctance. Aloys quickly supported Sherwin and slowly laid him on the ground. A few minutes later, Sherwin slowly woke up. "My head still feels somewhat dizzy." He slowly opens his eyes. His gaze still holds traces of the previous confusion and pain. However, he soon notices something unusual about his body. A sensation more intense than before. A feverish heat surges from deep within his body, rapidly spreading throughout his entire being. Aloys, seeing the snake shadow waken, was just about to say something, when she suddenly realizes something is wrong. Her face changes color. Her gaze falls upon the plant-based injection she had tossed into the space. She wishes a bolt of lightning would strike her unconscious. She never imagined she would have grabbed the wrong vial, mistaking an aphrodisiac for an anesthetic. Sherwin's breathing becomes rapid. He looks at Aloys and says in a hoarse voice, "Your Highness, what is happening to me?" Aloys bites her lip, unsure how to respond. She turns around in a panic, wanting to search her system space for an antidote. But deep down, she knows this type of aphrodisiac has no antidote. Sherwin's reason gradually crumbles under the assault of desire. He begins to move uncontrollably toward Aloys. Aloys backs away in terror. Estrus period, plus an aphrodisiac. This damned medicine king, she tries to stop Sherwin. But her strength is insignificant before the snake shadow. Sherwin's reason is completely lost under the drug's influence. He is like a beast out of control, pouncing toward Aloys with reckless abandon. Aloys struggles with all her might. Before the serpent shadow in heat, her resistance seemed so feeble. "Aloys, snap out of it." Aloys shouted loudly, trying to awaken the serpent shadow's last shred of reason. Yet at this moment, the serpent shadow could not hear any words. His eyes were fixed only on Aloys. Aloys's clothes were torn in the struggle. Fear gradually spread throughout her entire body. She had never imagined she would end up in such a situation. And the one who started it all was actually herself. The room was filled with an ambiguous atmosphere. Just then, a red figure flew in through the window. Its broad wings gave a powerful flap. A strong gust of air instantly separated the serpent shadow and Aloys. Aloys stared at the giant chestnut kite before her. Her eyes widened in astonishment. She had never seen such a massive and beautiful chestnut kite. The giant chestnut kite turned its head and looked at Aloys with its crimson eyes. Its gaze seemed to carry a hint of concern and tension. Corentine flapped its wings, but did not respond, turning around to face Sherwin directly. Seeing Sherwin's unusual reaction, he unconsciously frowned. "Sherwin, have you gone mad? How dare you force this troublesome female? Aren't you afraid she'll pluck your snake scales again?" Sherwin's eyes were bloodshot, his entire body's muscles tense, as if he was struggling to restrain himself. Yet, the effects of the aphrodisiac were gradually shattering his reason. He lunged toward Jun Yulua once again. Corentine quickly flapped his wings and tangled with Sherwin. The furniture was knocked askew by them. Although Corentine was not weak in strength, under Sherwin's frenzied and powerful attacks, he gradually became somewhat unable to hold his ground. "Damn it! How did this guy become so strong?" Corentine cursed inwardly. Suddenly, Sherwin turned sideways and kicked Corentine in the abdomen. Corentine immediately felt a sharp pain in his abdomen, as if all his internal organs had been displaced. But Sherwin did not give Corentine any chance to catch his breath. Like a crazed beast whose mate had been stolen, he lunged at Corentine again. Corentine gritted his teeth against the pain and climbed up from the ground. Just then, Aloys suddenly rushed over and stood in front of Corentine. "Sherwin, enough. Don't fight anymore," Aloys shouted loudly. Seeing Aloys, a flicker of confusion passed through Sherwin's eyes. "Your Highness, step aside. I can't control myself." Sherwin's body trembled slightly. His rationality was almost gone under the impact of desire. "Your Highness, I'm really in pain." Sherwin's voice carried a hint of pleading. Aloys looked at the painful shadow of the snake, her heart filled with reluctance. Behind Jun Yuluo, Corentine felt mixed emotions. He was both worried that Sherwin might hurt Aloys in his out-of-control state, and yet felt a bit secretly pleased by her concern. At this moment, Sherwin suddenly let out a furious roar. He lunged towards Jun Yuluo once again. Aloys instinctively closed her eyes. However, the expected pain did not come. She slowly opened her eyes and found Sherwin stopped right in front of her, his body trembling uncontrollably. "Your Highness, there is only one way now. Sherwin is in heat. If he doesn't get relief, it will cause great harm to his body. Under the dual torment of mind and psychology, he will develop a sense of self-loathing and may even do something to hurt himself. Bad female. Just take Sherwin." After hearing Corentine's words, Aloys's heartbeat involuntarily quickened. She looked at Sherwin, then at Corentine. She never expected these words to come from Corentine's mouth. Who could understand that feeling? Both of them are his side husbands. Aloys saw Sherwin's gaze filled with pain and desire fixed tightly on her. A blush spread across her face. Her heart plunged into extreme conflict. Seeing Jun Yuluo's hesitant appearance, Corentine couldn't help but feel anxious. He raised his voice and said, "He is your beast, husband. What are you hesitating for?" Sherwin noticed Aloys's hesitation. A trace of despair flickered in his eyes. Knowing he shouldn't hope, yet he couldn't control the longing in his heart. He spoke with difficulty. "Your Highness need not be troubled. It's Sherwin." Before he could finish speaking, a trace of blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth. His body also swayed, on the verge of collapse. "Sherwin!" Aloys exclaimed in shock, instinctively taking a step forward to support him. His originally ice-cold body was now exceptionally scalding hot. Aloys took a deep breath, trying hard to calm herself down. She slowly raised her hand and encircled Sherwin's waist. Sherwin's body trembled violently. He raised his head, a flash of pleasant surprise in his eyes. "Your Highness." "Shh! Sherwin, don't speak for now." Aloys softly called his name, struggling within her own heart. She knew what making this decision meant. Sherwin could no longer suppress the emotions in his heart. He pulled Jun Yuluo into his embrace. Aloys could feel his scorching body temperature and intense heartbeat. Her face grew even redder. Her heartbeat also became more rapid. Corentine looked at the two embracing each other. Suppressing the discomfort in her heart, she turned and left. No matter what, for Sherwin, at this moment, Aloys being willing to help him was the best outcome. The night was deep, like thick ink that could not be dissolved. Aloys sat by the bedside, rubbing her sore wrist. She felt her hand was about to be ruined. Her gaze occasionally fell on Sherwin's face, watching his sleeping countenance. Recalling the scenes from just moments ago, her cheeks couldn't help but flush. Just as her thoughts drifted to increasingly indescribable places, Sherwin let out a low moan. Aloys was startled, instinctively reaching out to try and knock him unconscious. Suddenly, a large hand pulled her into an embrace. Before Aloys could even react, Sherwin's lips were already pressed against hers. Aloys's mind went completely blank in an instant. She only felt as if her body had been set ablaze, blood boiling in her veins. She could clearly feel Sherwin's intense heartbeat. intertwining with the sound of her own. Sherwin's lips left Aloy's, then left a bite mark on the nape of her neck. Just as Aloy was lost in a haze of passion, Sherwin suddenly stopped his movements, his eyes filled with deep affection and longing, his voice carrying a hint of hoarseness and tremor. "Your Highness, may I?" Aloy gazed into Sherwin's fervent eyes. The defenses in her heart instantly crumbled. She softly hummed in agreement. Having received Aloy's response, Sherwin seemed to have gained approval. He lowered his head once more. At that moment, King Ruin's slightly urgent voice came from outside the door. "Your Highness, Wula has returned, and is requesting an audience outside the door." Aloy couldn't immediately recall who Wula was. Only after running it through her mind a few times did she remember that Wula was the original host's personal shadow guard. Some time ago, it was sent to capture the most beautiful mermaid of the mermaid clan. Thinking of this, Jun Yuluo's delicate body trembled. Wula has returned. That means the white on the outside, black on the inside little mermaid has also been captured. Her eyes instantly cleared from their dazed state. At that moment, Sherwin also woke up and slowly sat up. Knowing that Aloy was about to leave, Sherwin silently began to help her straighten her clothes. Aloy gave him a loud kiss on the cheek. "All right. You go back to sleep. I'll go take a look." Sherwin's eyes lit up. The corners of his mouth unconsciously lifted. His voice carried a trace of tender affection. "Come back soon, Your Highness." Aloy arrived in the living room. Opening the door, she saw Wula looking anxious. Upon seeing Aloy, Wula hurriedly bowed. "Your Highness, your subordinate has returned." Aloy nodded. "You've worked hard." "Wula, where is the mermaid beastman?" "Reporting to Your Highness. The mermaid beastman has been brought back. He is outside. However, the mermaid was severely injured during the capture. We have done our best to treat him, but the situation is still not very optimistic." Aloy wasn't very surprised by this, something she had known all along. Recalling the original plot, the mermaid prince, Lanyan, was also schemed against by his own brothers. He was severely injured, which allowed Wula to capture him. The original host heard that there was a beastman in the mermaid clan more beautiful than her. She wanted to see just how good-looking he really was. So she had him captured and brought back. Then, the original owner had 3 beast husbands, feeling extremely upset about various things. Facing the dying mermaid, not only did he not feel pity, he even developed a perverse desire to torment. One can imagine what kind of treatment the mermaid suffered. Finally, the mermaid used bewitching magic to escape. On the way, she was picked up by the original female protagonist, Alice. Under the female protagonist's careful care, she fell in love with her and became one of her beast husbands. Wula brought Aloy to the place where the mermaid prince Lane was kept. They saw Lane lying there quietly. His beautiful tail was covered in scars. The originally silver-blue scales had lost their luster. His cold white skin made his face appear even paler. His breath was so faint it seemed he might vanish at any moment. Aloy walked forward. Squatting beside Lane, she began to examine his injuries. Lane's injuries were more severe than she had imagined. There were several serious ones that had damaged his internal organs and tailbone. But it was too late now. She took out a healing potion from her space and injected him with it, instructing King Ruin to send him to the healing pod to treat the external wounds, then arrange a courtyard with a pool for him to rest. When Sherwin heard the commotion and came out, he saw Aloy bringing an unfamiliar beastman up. His whole heart sank, but he didn't show it. "Your Highness, rest early." Wula respectfully bowed. As soon as Aloy entered the room, before she could react, she was suddenly pressed against the wall by Sherwin. Without letting Aloy speak, he kissed her domineeringly. Aloy was startled at first, then gradually lost herself under Sherwin's fervent assault. However, at that very moment, Aloy felt a sharp pain in her head. Countless fragments replayed in her mind. Over and over, it stimulated her mind. finally converging into one image. It was the original host's wedding night with Sherwin. Even though it was just a memory, she could feel the original host's excitement and thrill at the time. She came full of anticipation, but the man sitting by the bed had a cold and indifferent expression, as if none of this concerned him. At first, he thought it was just his nature and didn't pay much attention. But no matter how he provoked later, the man still showed no reaction, not even the slightest change in his body. In a fit of anger, the original owner took out a syringe and injected him. But the result remained the same. The original owner became completely furious and began smashing things wildly, yet still couldn't dispel the rage in her heart. Finally, the original owner lost her reason and gave Snake Shadow a beating, then had him thrown out. And the man silently endured all of this, without resistance or explanation. Aloys was shocked by this memory, her eyes widening. She slowly pushed Sherwin away, covered her head with both hands, frowning in pain. Sherwin, suddenly pushed away, showed a trace of confusion in his eyes. But seeing Aloys's pained expression, he panicked and urgently asked, "Your Highness, what's wrong?" Aloys tried hard to shake off the images in her mind, but the scenes only grew clearer. A scratching-like pain continuously stimulated her. Countless images flooded into her mind. First Sherwin, then Jolene. Was it the same for Corentine too? So this was the reason the original owner had always abused them. As a wife, she was actually despised by her own beast husbands, even unable to react to her. This was the greatest insult to a female. And she, a princess, no less. How could she tolerate such humiliation? Yet these men couldn't be divorced, holding the title of her beast husbands, but unwilling to serve her, with no outlet for the resentment in her heart. And a so-called female lead, Alice, stirring up trouble from time to time. She could only assert her sovereignty by tormenting them. Meeting Sherwin's worried gaze, and recalling that icy, cold, indifferent pair of purple eyes in her memory, devoid of any warmth. Aloys couldn't think of what attitude to adopt toward him for the moment. "Sherwin, you should go back first." Hearing this, the color drained from Sherwin's face. A flicker of pain and disappointment flashed in his eyes. "Your Highness, did I do something wrong? Why are you sending me away?" Sherwin's voice trembled slightly, carrying unconcealable unease. Seeing Sherwin's appearance, Aloys also felt somewhat reluctant in her heart. But her mind was in utter chaos at that moment. She really didn't want to face him. "It's not your problem. I'm tired and want to rest." Sherwin bit his lip, forcing down the sadness in his heart. "All right, Your Highness, rest well. I'll wait for you." After speaking, Sherwin slowly turned around and left the room with heavy steps. Aloys watched Sherwin's departing figure, her heart filled with mixed emotions. She sat back down on the edge of the bed, hugging her knees. She tried hard to sort through the memories in her mind. The original owner's methods were certainly extreme, but as a proud princess, to be looked down upon by her own beast husbands, the resentment in her heart was understandable. And while these beast husbands might have their own hidden reasons, she didn't want to delve into any of it anymore. The next day, unwilling to face Courtland and Sherwin, Aloys appeared early in the morning in the courtyard where Lanyon resided. Aloys looked at Lane lying by the water pool, her mind filled with countless thoughts. Lane was originally captured by the original owner. Now, letting him go back is already impossible. Aloys would never allow Lane to have the chance to come into contact with the female lead, and thus become the female lead's aide. But the future Mermaid King, who rules the entire jellyfish star, must either be used by her, or Lane's upper body was bare, revealing muscles with beautiful lines, those not yet healed wounds crisscrossed, adding a unique, fragile beauty to him. A 3-meter-long fish tail gently slapped the water surface in the pool, glowing with a silver-blue light under the sunlight. Lane in the pool heard the faint sound of footsteps and slowly raised his head, the confusion and vigilance in his eyes. as deep as the ocean vanished in an instant. Even with psychological preparation, Aloys was still struck by his godlike, breathtaking beauty, and was momentarily dazed. Only after a moment did she regain her composure. "Are you feeling better?" Lane gently bit his lip and answered in a low voice. "Yes, much better. Thank you." That pitiful appearance made it hard not to feel pity for him. Aloys inwardly became wary. She must not be fooled by this pretty boy's appearance. "Aren't you a mermaid from Jellyfish Star? How are you so badly injured?" The mermaid tribe are powerful beings in the sea. Her asking this wasn't abrupt. He slightly lowered his head. The voice carries an indescribable ethereality, yet it is tinged with endless sorrow. "I am Lane, the sole descendant of the Mermaid King. A few months ago, calamity struck the sea tribe. My family all perished in that disaster." Lane slowly raised her head. Tears glistened in her eyes. That expression, woven with pain and despair, made anyone who saw it unable to help but feel pity. Aloys clicked her tongue inwardly. Of course. Those few family members who stabbed him all died by his own hand. "Thank you, sister, for saving my life. If not for you, sister, Lane might have already gone to meet the beast god. When he was caught, he had already fallen unconscious. He did not know that these people were specifically sent by Aloys to capture him." Learning that he had misunderstood the original owner, Aloys smiled slightly. "This is the Kalan Empire. I am the royal princess, Aloys. Saving you this time was purely by chance. My merchant caravan happened to be going to the Jellyfish Star to exchange supplies." Upon hearing her identity, shock flashed across Lane's face. He thanked her again with a trembling voice. "Thank you, princess sister, for your life-saving grace. Lane has no way to repay it. Lane dare not hope to offer himself in marriage. If sister does not mind, let Lane stay to serve you." Hearing this, Aloys actually felt a hint of secret delight. Looking at the wounds on Lane's body that had not yet healed, Aloys frowned, turned and fetched medicinal ointment. "Come up. Let me apply medicine for you first." She had him sit by the poolside and began to apply the medicine. Lane's skin trembled slightly under Junyuluo's touch. He bit his lip as if enduring pain. Aloys's movements could not be described as gentle, but she carefully applied the ointment every wound. "Lane, let her apply it on him." His deep blue eyes followed her movements. That well-behaved appearance of his. If Junyuluo hadn't already known his true nature, she might have really been deceived by him. As Aloys applied the medicine, she pondered in her heart how to deal with him. She could neither let him go, nor let him become a hidden danger. This was truly a tricky problem. To avoid meeting Snake Shadow and Corentine, Aloys spent her days resting, conducting experiments, or on the way to see Lane. Days quietly passed in Aloys's inner conflict and busyness. On one hand, Lane was truly outstanding in appearance, with long, wavy silver-blue gradient hair, deep blue eyes, and peerlessly beautiful features, possessing both masculine vigor and feminine softness. Truly androgynous, worthy of being called the most beautiful male in the galaxy. On the other hand, it was to monitor him. In the original plot, Lane used illusion magic to escape the princess's estate, and was eventually rescued by the female lead. She wanted to see if the plot would follow the original book's trajectory. But these past 2 days, the number of times she lost focus had noticeably increased. Lane also seemed to sense Aloys's preoccupation. He quietly watched her, his eyes showing just the right amount of heartache. "Princess sister, if my presence affects your relationship with the beast husbands, sister, you don't have to feel troubled. Lane will leave on her own." Aloys was slightly taken aback. "What nonsense are you thinking? The most important thing for you is to focus on recovering." She knew she couldn't continue like this forever, avoiding meetings with Corentine and Sherwin. But every time she thought of those memories, a strange, uncomfortable feeling would stir in her heart. "But if sister keeps accompanying me, the brothers seem unhappy. Shouldn't sister go check on them?" Hearing Lane's words, Aloys felt a slight stir in her heart. It had indeed been several days since she last properly spent time with Corentine and Sherwin. Some things must be asked clearly in person. You rest well. I'll go see them. Lane watched her departing figure. Her deep blue eyes narrowed slightly. She actually left just like that. It seems those two are quite important to her. Along the way, Aloys's mood was particularly complicated. Although she wanted to clarify what was going on, how should she even phrase this question when it came to her lips? Is he incapable, or is she incapable? Just as she was tangled in endless conflict, little Seven materialized before her eyes. Haven't seen you in days. Host, are you all right? What do you think? Little Seven didn't quite understand her point of anger. Could it be she wasn't satisfied? That's impossible, right? Is Sherwin incapable? Or is the host's appetite too big? A beastman's mating season lasts at least 3 days. It thought it would at least have to stay in the dark room for a few days, thinking it might as well take this opportunity to return to the main god space. It quickly skimmed through the data from the past few days and concluded, Sherwin really isn't up to it. Even like this, he still can't win over the host. No wonder she's so resentful. Little host, don't be angry. These past few days, Little Seven returned to the main god space to seek benefits for the host. Aloys's brows relaxed a bit. She didn't rush to ask what benefits. Instead, she inquired about another matter. Check what happened on the wedding night between the original host and the 3 beast husbands. One would be fine. But all 3 were like this. It's hard not to be suspicious. Upon hearing this, Little Seven immediately started a data query. Strings of mysterious data runes flashed around it. 30 seconds later, Little Seven finally stopped. Host, I found it. Turns out it was the female lead, Alice, who tampered with the original host's wedding dress. While helping to arrange the dress, she secretly applied a highly special drug on it. This drug is colorless and odorless, extremely covert and almost undetectable. Not only that, the female lead also used her identity as a pharmacist, being the apprentice of the Dean of Pharmaceutical Research, to drug them during their premarital checkup. Once these 2 drugs come into contact, they produce a peculiar chemical reaction. After a female puts on that drug-laced dress, her temper is greatly affected, becoming extremely irritable and quick to anger. And the male will fall into a state of temporarily losing perception, showing no interest in anything around them. Upon hearing Zhao Qi's explanation, Aloys felt a storm of shock and turmoil surge within her heart instantly. She never expected Alice to be so sinister and cunning, using such despicable means to drive a wedge between the original host and her beast husbands. This is not just simply being bad. It must be said she understood the original host's character well enough. But why did she do this? Could it be merely because she was extremely jealous of the original host's status? When she arrived at Sherwin's residence, she found Corentine and Snake Shadow sitting in the courtyard. One looking unwell, the other with a calm expression. What's going on here? Aloys asked softly. Corentine looked up. Seeing it was Aloys, his tone turned sarcastic. Oh, my. If it isn't Her Highness the Princess. Too busy to remember us. Why aren't you keeping your little merman company today? Although Sherwin didn't speak, his eyes revealed a hurt expression. Aloys was already accustomed to his attitude. She raised a smile and slowly walked up to the 2 of them. Corentine, do you have to speak with such a sarcastic tone? I didn't mean to neglect you. It's just that I've been a bit busy lately. Corentine let out a light scoff. Hey, you're clearly bewitched by that little merman, busy building a relationship with him. How could you possibly remember us, your outdated beast husbands? Corentine grew angrier the more she thought about it. This female seemed afraid they would harm that person and the male. She actually stationed over a dozen guards around them for protection. To care so much and still try to deceive them. Aloys took a deep breath. Corentin's hot temper really made her want to give him a few hard knocks to make him shut up. She turned to look at Sherwin, her gaze full of apology and concern. Sherwin, don't listen to his nonsense. You are the most important people to me. He is just a patient. Corentine snorted coldly. Easy to say. Who knows what you really think in your heart? If you truly cared, how could you let Sherwin, who is still in his estrus cycle, be unattended? And go find you. You even pretended not to see. Deliberately ignored us. He didn't dare believe a single word she said anymore. Aloys knew if she didn't explain, Corentine would keep harping on this matter. Since the female lead wanted to see them turn against each other, she would deliberately show affection in front of her, and even snatch away all her future longevity and fortune. Corentine, don't speak for now. Lane is severely injured. Without timely treatment, his life could be in danger. I've just been treating him these past few days. Sherwin slightly raised his eyes, his voice somewhat hoarse. Then why has your highness been avoiding us? Aloys crouched down, took Sherwin's hand, and placed a kiss on the back of it. I know my negligence has hurt you. I promise I won't be like this again. Sherwin's cheeks instantly flushed with a hint of crimson. He slightly lowered his head, not daring to look directly into Aloys's eyes. The hand that Aloys had kissed trembled lightly. A surge of indescribable joy and shyness welled up in his heart. Seeing this, Corentine's dissatisfaction grew even stronger. He snorted heavily. Crossing his arms in front of his chest, he opened his mouth as if to say something, but was afraid of humiliating himself. In the end, he closed his mouth resentfully. Only his eyes were full of grievance and anger, like a child whose favorite toy had been snatched away. Corentine, what kind of expression is that? Don't you believe me? Aloys was amused by his sundear little expression, but still deliberately put on a stern face to ask, I wonder who it was that left us aside for that. Mermaid. And only now remembers to comfort us. Only a fool would believe you. As he spoke, he deliberately turned his head away, not looking at Aloys. Corentine stood up and walked toward Corentine. How could this princess ignore such an adorable little Brahmini kite? I couldn't love you more. But Corentine wasn't buying it. Sounds nice. If you really cared about us, you wouldn't have made us wait so long. Aloys was speechless. Corentine. Lane's situation was truly critical. I couldn't just stand by and watch him die. Corentine turned his head away, still pouting angrily. When he himself was seriously injured, why didn't she show such concern? Sure enough, this is the difference between love and not loving. Thinking about it, my eyes turned red with anger. Aloys was stunned. Sure enough, it's the easily ruffled little Brahmini kite, quick to get red-eyed at the slightest disagreement. Alright, don't be angry anymore. Later, I'll make your favorite stir-fried cabbage for you. Although Corentine didn't respond, there was already a hint of softening in his eyes, and he kept glancing at Sherwin's hand from time to time. Seeing him like this, Aloys suddenly had a stroke of inspiration. She stepped forward, turned his face toward her, and kissed him on the cheek. Corentine's face instantly turned bright red. His crimson eyes widened slightly. His hands fluttered nervously, unsure where to place them. He stammered and said, "What are you doing?" Aloys, seeing how adorable he looked, couldn't help but laugh. Not angry anymore, right? Corentine's face was still terribly red. He awkwardly turned his head away and said stubbornly, "Who says I'm not angry? But for the sake of the stir-fried cabbage, I'll reluctantly forgive you this time." At this moment, the silent snake shadow slightly raised his eyes. Looking at Aloys and Corentine, a flicker of envy passed through his gaze. Aloys noticed Snake Shadow's emotions. She walked over to him, leaned down, and whispered something in his ear. Sherwin's eyes lit up, and he nodded with a blush. Aloys turned and led Corentine back to her courtyard. Corentine felt somewhat uneasy and restless the whole way. The blush on her face had not yet completely faded. As soon as they entered the courtyard, Aloys let go of Corantine's hand. Corentine looked at her own hand, and a trace of reluctance unexpectedly welled up in her heart. "Have a seat," Aloys said with a smile. Corentine sat down awkwardly. Her eyes darted around. She just didn't dare to look at Aloys. Seeing her like this, Aloys found it utterly adorable. "Why are you still unhappy?" "This time, it was my fault. In the future, I will definitely care more about you all. I won't let you feel the illusion of being neglected again." Corentine snorted. "Your Highness must keep your word." Of course. This was the first time Corentine had willingly called her Your Highness. "By the way, Corentine, have you had anything you particularly wanted to do recently? Or anything you especially wanted to eat?" Corentine thought for a moment and said, "I want to eat food made by Your Highness." Aloys laughed. "All right. I'll go make it for you in a moment." After saying this, Aloys stood up, ready to leave. Aloys arrived at the kitchen and began preparing the ingredients. Corentine followed closely behind her. Her face was radiant with joy. But she tried hard to restrain herself, not letting this joy show too obviously. "Tonight's meal is for me alone. Your Highness is not allowed to invite Sherwin to eat with us." Corentine slightly raised her chin, with an expression that said, "If you dare invite him, I'll turn against you." The domineering tone carried a hint of cautious probing. "All right, they're all yours." She skillfully washed the vegetables. Corentine watched eagerly from the side, reaching out from time to time, wanting to help, but afraid of causing trouble. The quality of these vegetables was too good, fresher than any he had seen in the imperial palace. He was afraid he might ruin them if he wasn't careful. "Corentine, go get the plates over there." Corentine pretended not to care. "Hey, you tell me to get them, so I just get them?" But his body honestly picked up the plates and handed them to Aloys. "Can I eat this directly?" He pointed at the cleaned red fruit in the vegetable basket. Aloys picked up a freshly washed tomato and stuffed it directly into his mouth. "If you want to eat it, then eat it. No one's stopping you." Corentine munched on the tomato, while watching John Yuluo cut and stir-fry the vegetables. The kitchen began to fill with waves of fragrance. His gaze never left Aloys's figure, his heart full of emotion. But he muttered, "Such a strange method, who knows if it'll taste good?" Aloys gave him a sidelong glance and continued stir-frying. Soon, several vegetable dishes with excellent color, aroma, and flavor were ready. Aloys plated the dishes. Corentine couldn't wait, picked up his chopsticks, and took a bite. "Wow, delicious." After speaking, as if remembering something, he deliberately put on a stern face and pouted. "It's just barely edible. Only you would say that. Even eating can't shut you up." Aloys tapped his head with her chopsticks. The two ate and chatted. The atmosphere was still quite harmonious. After the meal, the sanitation robot came over to clean up the bowls and chopsticks. Aloys took Corentine straight to the backyard vegetable garden. As soon as he entered the garden, Corentine was stunned by the sight before him. On this interstellar land, the soil was barren, and it had always been difficult to grow anything. But now, the vegetable seeds sown just a few days ago had actually sprouted. Corentine snapped back to reality, trying hard to restrain his excitement. He didn't want Aloys to see he was overly thrilled. It would make him seem inexperienced. Yet, he couldn't help but start walking briskly in small steps around the garden. His body trembled slightly, almost unable to control himself from revealing his beast form. But he still talked tough. "It's nothing that amazing. They're just some vegetable sprouts." Yet his eyes remained fixed, unable to look away from those tender green sprouts. Aloys watched Corentine like this and chuckled inwardly. "I knew you'd like it. I'll leave this vegetable garden for you to take care of from now on, okay?" Corentine gave a light hum. "Who likes it? I'm just a bit surprised, that's all." Even as he said this, his feet involuntarily circled the garden again and again. His eyes kept scanning the garden, as if already thinking about where to start taking care of it. Alois said with a smile, "Since you don't care for it, then I'll leave it to Snake Shadow to handle." Not aloud. These words almost blurted out. Only after speaking did he realize he was too agitated. He gave a light cough before continuing to argue. "Seeing that your highness is so sincere, I'll reluctantly agree." After speaking, he stole another glance at those tender green sprouts. A sense of responsibility welled up in his heart. Alois is willing to entrust such an important place to him.